Welcome to our class on Chassidus. We're going to be learning a beautiful Chassidic discourse from the Rebbe. The name of the Chassidic discourse is called באתי, לגני, אחותי, כלה. The Rebbe said, this Chassidic discourse in Shabbos Parshas Beshalach, that year was the 10th day of the month of Shvat, in the year Tafshin Mem Daled, 40 years ago. So again, the Chassidic discourse is based on the verse in the prophets where King Solomon says, באתי, לגני. God is saying, I came to my garden. אחותי, my kala, my sister, my bride. And the Rebbe brings from the previous Rebbe, who was celebrating his yahrzeit, that he gave out a Chassidic discourse with the same title to learn on right before he passed away. So he brings from the Medrash. The Medrash says, the verse says, באתי, לגני, I came to my garden. So the Medrash is leganuni. What does it mean, my garden? To the place that my main presence was felt there before. In other words, because you know when Hashem created the world, He created the world and Hashem dwelled in the world. And unfortunately, through the fact that there were 7 terrible things that happened, for each terrible thing that happened, Hashem, so to speak, when it left the world, He left the world and He started to disguise Himself. First He left from this world, then to one heaven, to the next, until He came up to the 7th heaven. So God is concealed. Then came along 7 righteous people, 7 tzaddikim, starting with Avraham Avinu. As we know, Avram was called Echad Oy Avram. He was the one, means he was the first one. And he brought down the Shekhinah, Hashem's presence, from the highest heaven, the 7th, down to the next one. And then that happened for 7 tzaddikim, 7 righteous people, until the 7th one was Moshe Rabbeinu. And Rebbe says, we know the 7th is always the beloved. And he brought down the Shekhinah from the last Rakia down into this world. And when we say this world, we're talking about the world which is a materialistic, physical world where God is the most concealed. That's where He brought the Shekhinah back in there. Now, drawing back the Shekhinah down in this world through Moshe Rabbeinu, how did He do that? So mainly it was done by building the tabernacle. And like it says in the Torah clearly, the Asuli Migdash, make to me a holy place, V'shachanti b'soicham, and Hashem says, I'll dwell in there. In other words, drawing down the main energy and the main presence of Hashem, V'shachanti, in the materialistic Mishkan, which was made by either 13 or 15 materialistic things that was used to make the Mishkan. And in there itself, referring to it not only wasn't in the Mishkan, but it actually, the Shekhinah comes in to each and every one of us. So the Rebbe says we know what the powerful teaching in the Medrash and the mystical teachings of the different Chabad Rebbeim, based on the verse in the prophets in Psalms, where it says Noira Lila Bnei Adam. In other words, we speak of the greatness of Hashem. So he says over there in the Chassidic discourse that the 7 terrible things that happened throughout the generations that caused God to leave this world, starting from the primordial sin of the Eitz Hadas. So and because of that, because of the sin, Hashem, so to speak, concealed Himself. So the Rebbe says something very powerful. I mean, he's sharing a teaching in the previous Chabad Rebbeim that was the intent. Hashem knew that people were going to sin. And Hashem knew because of that He's got to conceal Himself. So what's the whole idea? If He knew that people are going to be weak and people are going to sin, and therefore He's got to conceal Himself. And the Rebbe explains, because it says, you read the Tzorech Aliyah. Every downgrade, every concealment is so that later on there should be a greater revelation. In other words, when there's a concealment, and then later on, we draw down God back into the world, it's going to be a greater revelation. Like it says, Achoti kala, my sister, my bride. In other words, this drawing down, which comes after, not the free gift that Hashem was here, but the one that we are begging and pleading through our learning Torah and doing mitzvahs for God to come down here. So that is a greater revelation, greater than it was in the beginning of creation. So it's powerful. So in other words, when you look at, God forbid, sins, no one should sin. But the Rebbe is saying is that Hashem knows that you're going to sin. Why? Because after the sin, you go ahead and you find inner strength to bring in a greater revelation of Hashem. And that's why it says, tzaddikim, righteous people, inherit the land, and they dwell in it forever. What does that mean? That what's the spiritual work of a tzaddik is to draw in the Shekhinah, God's presence, a very high level of Shaychinad Mar Kaddish, a very high level of a Kaddish Baruch Hu, down into this physical world in a way that it lasted forever. Why is that? Because what's causing Hashem to be down in this world? Not a free gift, but learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. And we know Torah is everlasting. Like it says, Hashem Yimloich La'olam V'ad, Hashem is going to be the king forever. Starting from the drawing it down in the Mishkan what Moshe Rabbeinu did, and as we know that everything that Moshe Rabbeinu did has an everlasting effect. Now, and the reason why when you draw down the main Shekhinah, the main presence of Hashem in this physical world, which happens through our spiritual service, and why is that greater than the revelation Hashem did when He originally created the world? Why is that? Rebbe explains like this: because when we redraw down Hashem's presence, it was after Hashem, so to speak, left. How do we do that? So we have to do something in Kabbalistically. It's called, and I'll say it in Hebrew, Aramaic, and I'll translate it. We do it through our avodah, spiritual work, which is called Hishabcha, transformation. What does that mean? When Hashem originally created the world, Hashem's here. Wonderful. What happens when Hashem left? Now the world is even darker. So when we do our spiritual work of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and prayer, it's something which is called Yishapcha Chashaycha and Hira. We're taking darkness and making it into light. And what happens is when darkness gets transformed into light, so it's a much greater light. Yisrael, it's a much powerful light. Just like the quality of a Baal Tshuva, someone that returns to Hashem over a tzaddik. A tzaddik, his whole life is, the light's on. But a Baal Tshuva that has to work on himself to bring the light, it's a much more powerful light. And like the Rebbe brings from the Zohar, it says, Kadiskafia Sitra Achra, Istalik Yikar the Kuchabrich B'Kol Almin, when you practice restraint, and don't listen to the other side, the opposite of holiness, then Hashem is felt all over. In other words, when we do the spiritual work of practicing iskafia, restraint, and ishapcha, transformation, we actually draw in a much greater light. And this light is in a very, very high level, and that's why it's called istalik. Not only means it's found, but it's talking about a level of istalik, that's what's in the world. And that's why when we built the Mishkan, it was made out of krushim. Krushim are planks. And these are the planks are made out of atzei shittim, acacia wood. Now we know keresh means a plank, but keresh has the same letters as sheker, falsehood. Obviously in a different setup of the letters. There's this different, not oneness of Hashem, but it's like different. But when we do the avodah of to make the krusha, means we transform the falsehood of the world into a keresh, a plank for Hashem. We make it for the Mishkan out of acacia wood. And as we take the falsehood of the world and we transform it into a plank for the Mishkan for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we take the silliness of the world and we transform it to silliness or holiness. That's the idea of Ati Shittim. So what happens then is we draw in the main essence of the Hashem's presence in the materialistic world, even higher than when Hashem originally created the world. So far we learned our powerful avodah of doing the work of Iskafia Habcha, and that brings in a greater light than Hashem originally created the world. So because of that, the Rebbe says, the preacher continues in the Chassidic discourse, and that's why the Jewish people are called Tzivois Hashem. We have a title. We are soldiers in God's army. Like it says in the Torah clearly, Vayhi bayatzum hayom hazeh, was on that day, when we went out of Egypt, Yatzu kol tzivos Hashem me'eretz Mitzrayim, the soldiers in God's army left Egypt. So he liked to explain the connection, why we called soldiers, because this idea that the Jewish people are not intimidated from the darkness and the falsehood of the world. And on the contrary, not only are we not intimidated that we don't get affected, but on the contrary, we transform it into holiness. How do we do that? So the spiritual work that we do is called Mesiras Nefesh. We go on self-sacrifice. It's not easy to go ahead and do differently than the whole world is doing. The whole world is busy with whatever they're busy with. And we're instead learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and praying and being happy and making the world a godly place. That's called Mesiras Nefesh. And sometimes it's hard to do it. The mind doesn't let us. Our heart doesn't let us. So we have another tool which is called Kabbalah Soil. We accept. We do what we have to, even though it doesn't make sense at times, it doesn't feel right, and we're not in the mood. But we have the power of the serious nefesh. We go and self-sacrifice to make that God should be felt here. And the idea of what? Kabbalah Soil. Accepting what Hashem wants without whether we understand it or feel it, etc. And that's why we're called Sivais Hashem. We're soldiers in God's army. Because what is it, Tzava? We're basically a soldier. And that's the connection that we're called Sivais Hashem when we went out of Egypt. Why? Because this terminology of being a soldier in God's army, when did we earn that title? When we left Egypt. Specifically, why? Because what is the spiritual work in exile of Egypt? And the same thing applies to all the exiles. Because we know that all the exiles that we're in is all based on the original Mitzrayim, the original Egypt, because Egypt comes from the word of Mitzrayim Lishon. They cause pain for the Jewish people, which means they cause pain for Yiddishkeit and for the Jewish people. The Rebbe he says it in Yiddish, they machen eng Yiddishkeit uniden. They make it tough for Judaism and for the Jewish people. So how do we overcome that? We overcome that two key tools that we have in our chest. One is Kabbalah Soil, accepting. We just do whatever Hashem wants. It makes sense. It feels right. It doesn't make a difference. We do what Hashem wants. And Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. Now, and that's why we got the title of Tzivos Hashem. When we do our avodah of Kabbalah Soil, just accepting whatever Hashem wants, and Mesiras Nefesh, so then what happens is, for all the Jewish people there is, oir, light in the dwelling place. In other words, even though you can be in Gullus, you can be in the middle of exile, but guess what? The light is on for the Jewish people. And not only in your four amot, in your immediate space, but the fact is every single house that a Jew walks into, even if you walk into a house of a non-Jew, so what happened was the light would come with you. And it would actually lighten up, and all the house and the rooms and the cellars all over. The light would shine everywhere. In the tunnels, it would light up the tunnels. In other words, and that was the preparation of being able to take everything out of Egypt. In other words, by transforming all the sparks that were in Egypt, and so that was the avodah in Egypt. And afterwards, we left Egypt, and we came to the sea, and over there, the possessions that we were able to amass by the sea was even greater than the land of Egypt. Why? Because those sparks that we couldn't transform in the land of Egypt, because they were totally concealed, more than the items that were concealed in Egypt. So what happens is, Pari himself, they have to get transformed. So Pari himself brought it to the sea so that we can go ahead and elevate it. And so we had the two avodas. One is the transforming everything in Egypt. Then we transformed everything by the sea, what we couldn't do in the land of Egypt. And this was all preparation for us to receive the Torah. Like it says clearly, I'll quote the verse, like Yisam and Shamas Yisam Yamsov. Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu took the Jewish people from the Sea of Reeds. In other words, he took them straight from the transformation of Egypt, straight from the transformation of the sea to receive the Torah. And that's why the Jewish people are called, when we left Egypt, Tzivos Hashem, we're soldiers in God's army. Why? Because Tzivos Hashem, it's not a name to describe HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not a description of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because as we know, that there is a name Tzva'os, which is a holy name. For one of the 7 names that you're not allowed to actually erase. But that name, when it's associated to God, is only later on revealed to us through the prophets. However, in the Torah itself, the name Tzva'os, referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is not in the Torah itself. It's only later on in the prophets. But when it says Tzivos Hashem in the Torah, which means the soldier close to Yud Kei Vav Chei, and it's secondary to Yud Kei Vav Chei, Tzivos to Hashem. In other words, what is that? That's referring to the way we practice acceptance of Kabbalah Soil, accepting what Hashem wants, which like a soldier accepts whatever he's told to do. And what are we accepting to Yud Kei Tzivos Hashem? We're accepting to do Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is above nature. And when we behave in a way of tzva'os or tzivos, and a soldier that's ready, committed to do whatever Hashem wants, that's how we can go ahead and transform and elevate all the sparks in Egypt. And even things that were totally concealed, we have the power to go ahead and transform and elevate. Now, as we know, why is that? Because what's the source of all the concealments? The source of any concealment comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It comes from which part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Shem Elokim. And that's why we know the Shem Elokim is the same numerical value as Ha-Teva, the nature. Now, even though you're saying Elokim is a source of concealment, Elokim is godliness. But it only has the numerical value of nature. In other words, godliness is revealed is Elokim, but the fact that there's nature, that's concealment, it's only a numerical value of it. But nevertheless, it is the source of all nature, and that is the part that Hashem Elokim comes through tremendous concealments and contraction of light, and that's the idea of what Teva comes from, it's sunk, so to speak, sunk into the sea, that the light, yes, it is the light from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's totally sunk and concealed, like he explains at length in the Chassidic discourse of the previous Rebbe in the 13th chapter. Now, but through the fact that we do our spiritual work of tzivos havaya, which means tzivos, we're a soldier, that means we're totally accepting Kabbalah soil to what? To Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is above nature. What happens then is, through that we have the power to transform and elevate the sparks that are totally concealed, and we can make a dwelling place for Hashem, literally in the lowest places, means where Hashem is totally concealed. And like in the expression of the Alter Rebbe says, but tachtoin she'ein tachtoin lameno, which means in the lowest places we have the power to make a dwelling place for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay. Rebbe says to understand this, in other words, that even though that the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is totally concealed, and a double concealment in the world, but nevertheless, so on one hand we're saying Hashem is concealed. On the other hand, we're saying that when we do our avodah of Kabbalah soil, we cause that concealment to get revealed. So the previous Rebbe explains in the 14th chapter, and we know that the 14th chapter is connected to this year. And when the Rebbe said the Chassidic discourse, it was in the second cycle, which is double, which is very, very powerful. Obviously now we're in the fourth cycle, and so he brings over there in the chapter, he says like this. So on one hand, what did we learn till now? Hashem is concealed, and we have the power from the concealment to create a transformation. So, but now in the 14th chapter, the previous Rebbe brings a verse that says, the Ata, referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mechaya es kulam, give everything its energy and its life force. What does that mean? That the light and the energy is shining, and it's even felt in the lowest places. Again, remember, when we say low, we don't mean physically low. It means in the greatest concealment and the lowest places where, so to speak, God is totally not felt. And nevertheless, even though it's so low where God is concealed and not felt, and possibly the opposite of godliness, but nevertheless, even over there, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there, even in the lowest places. And it's revealed there, up to the point that any simple person could realize that in the lowest places, the most decrepit places, Hashem is there. Hashem is all over. So on one hand, what we learned till now, that it's concealed. Through our avodah, we transform it. But here the Rebbe is saying, from the previous in the 14th chapter, in the lowest places, everywhere Hashem is there. In other words, in the 13th chapter, he explains that the light comes down and there's tremendous tzimtzumim, contractions or concealments, etc. But now he does a flip in the 14th chapter. He explains just the opposite, that how the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealed everywhere. And that's how he starts off the chapter, the 14th chapter, the Ata, you, referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mechaya, give life as kulam. Everywhere Hashem's life is there. And that means we're focusing directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, that the energy of every single thing that's created is not in a concealed way, it's in a revealed way. Up to the point, you say, Ata, you can look at anything in the world, a door, a floor, a person, whatever it is, you can say, Hashem is there. In other words, this that when something gets involved in something, it causes a change in it. That's only an energy which goes into the category of koyach, which means a power. However, when it comes to the light that gives it its life force, there is no difference. What Rebbe is saying is like this. What did he just say? The light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere. So you can say, what do you mean? The fact is, when something goes down from higher to lower, again, we're talking spiritually, so it should start getting weaker. Rebbe says, you know what gets weaker? A koyach, a power gets weaker. Light doesn't get weaker. So the same light, which is on the highest level, is in the lowest level. So the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere. And Rebbe will understand this based on it's known, there's three different expressions. Oir, light, which we just said is everywhere. Chayas, energy. And koyach, power, like the Rebbe says, that's already different. That gets weaker. So the Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya, and he says like this. These three expressions, they're three levels. So again, remember always, the Chassidic discourse from Yud Shvat, Rebbe brings in all the Rebbeim. Starting from the Baal Shem Tov, the Magid, the Alter Rebbe, all the Rebbeim. So you see, he quotes in the Alter Rebbe, and now he brings that way it's explained by the Mittel Rebbe in his classical works of Imre Dina, and now he also brings from the Rebbe Rashab that explains this in his classical works of the year Tafrei Shayin Beis, and he says like this: the expression of koyach, which means a power. A koyach, a power, is disconnected from a source. And because the power is disconnected from a source, so therefore it's on a concealed level. However, when you're dealing with light, and the same thing also with chayas, with energy, it's always connected to its source. And that's why it's always revealed everywhere. So what's the difference between oil, light, and chayas and energy? So Rebbe explains. Light is makif. It hovers over and doesn't get really involved, it doesn't get personalized. The light shines, it doesn't get personalized. It's makif. However, chayas, energy, so even though it gets internalized, so chayas is already more internalized, which gets involved based on whatever it's giving life force to, but nevertheless, and because the revelation of the energy of chayas is different than oir, but nevertheless it doesn't change. In other words, why is that? Because since chayas, energy, is connected to its source, so even though it gets involved, it doesn't disconnect. Okay, so Rebbe is explaining like this as follows. The light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is all over, on the lowest levels. So he explains there's three different terminologies. There's the light that's all over, but again, even when it's all over, it's makif, but it doesn't change. The chayas is all over, but again, it's obviously personalized, but also doesn't change. And the reason why oir and chayas don't change, because it's connected to its source. And that's why it's revealed all over. Koyach, on the other hand, is disconnected. It becomes an independent entity, and that's why it does change. So it says we have to understand. It's known that with the godly energy, in things that were created, there's another level. Till now we learned three levels. Chayas, and Koyach. There's a third level. What's the third level? And this is the revolutionary idea that Rebbe explains, which he didn't explain in the last discourse from 20 years before. What's the fourth level? There's a level called Shem, a name. And now again, remember, he brings him from all the different Chabad Rebbeim and starting from the Baal Shem Tov, so he brings from the Baal Shem Tov now. And like the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, which is brought down in his book called which is brought down in Shari Yichud Emunah of the Alter Rebbe, and he explains it as follows: that the names of everything that was created in this world, those are the actual letters and words that come down from where? From the 10 utterances that Hashem used in the Torah, and it comes down through different exchanges and different setup, etc. But basically, every single thing comes. The source is from the 10 utterances. That's from Baal Shem Tov. It's also known the teaching of the Maggid of Mezrich, based on the verse where it says, "V'chol asher yikle Adam nefesh chayu shmoi," that Adam, the first one that Hashem created, he gave names to the animals, and whatever name he gave, that's the name of the animal. Now, the names that Adam Arishan gave to all the creations, for example, he said this is appropriate to call an ox. In Hebrew, it's called a shur, and this is all the different names he gave for the different animals. So the names that he gave, the names is the energy of the animal. So based on that, again, from the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid, he explains what it says in Chazal, that when Adam HaRishon called the different animals their names, again, remember, the names is the energy of the item. Like the Maggid taught us, like the Baal Shem Tov taught us. So since the name is the energy of it, and he was able to call the name, which is the energy of the animal, showed how smart he was, up to the point where Hashem says, your wisdom of Adam is greater than the angels. Because he was able to call names for every single animal. In other words, how is he able to call the name for the animal? Because he was able to look into the source of the animal, and because he's able to see the source, he saw what letters it came from, he called it its name. Well, it's not just a name, just to be able to call something. He was able to see what letters of the 10 utterances create the energy that the animal should exist. For example, shur. He saw that in order for a shur to exist, it pulls a shin and a vav and a reish, and that's how he created the word shur. So he's able to see that. And the same thing also applies to all the names of human beings. Notice every single person's name. Not Adam for all people, every single individual's name. And notice every single person, that is your energy. So for example, if your name is Moshe, Mem, Shin, Hey, that is your energy. Meir, Leah, whatever your name is, that's your energy. In other words, the godly energy that every single one has, like it says, the Ata Machayas Kulam Hashem gives us, otherwise we wouldn't exist without the energy of Hashem. What is that? That is the name. That's the power of a name. So in other words, so till now, just to recap, till now we learned about light, energy, and power. Now we're saying, no, what's the real energy? The real energy is the name. Because that caused it to be created. Like he brings in the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, and like what says that reference to Adam, that why was he so powerful? He was able to identify the source of the energy. So based on that, Rabbi says we have to understand, how does this go together with what's explained in the Chassidic discourse of the previous Rebbe, that it says that the Atom Machayas Kulam, you give everything life force. So he said, what gives everything life force? It's not Koyach, because that's obviously different based on the level. So the previous Rebbe explained, it's referring to Oir, light, and Chayas. Light is all over the same, and Chayas the energy. But the fact is, one second, there's shame. That's question number one. Next question says we have to understand, as we know that Oir, the light, and the same thing also with Chayas, which is energy, and the name, it's actually two opposites. Why? Because light and energy, like we learned before, light is more makif and energy is more primi. That's something which is revealed, that everything has light and everything has energy. However, the name of a person or a thing is concealed. Like he'll explain later on more at length why do we see the name is concealed. But the fact is that Oir and Chayas is revealed, and the name is concealed. And this is also what is explained from the Alter Rebbe in Shar Yichud V'Emunah, and he brings over there from the Arizal, that even in something which is inanimate, like for example a stone, in there you have a soul, a nefesh, and spiritual energy. And you can say that when he says inanimate, when he refers to physically a rock, he's also referring to inanimate on a spiritual level. Because we know everything Hashem created, the way that it's in its source, what they show and they reveal the godly energy. Look at anything, you'll know the godly energy that it has in it. In other words, the creation that Hashem created, they say that they have godly energy. Otherwise, how would it exist? And like we know, for example, that everything that Hashem created praises HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, because unfortunately we're living in a world where there's so much concealment, so there are certain things that Hashem created that looks like it's inanimate. It doesn't have any life force. In other words, they don't reveal the godly energy that's within them. So therefore he says, even in something which is inanimate, in other words, it looks like someone will say, rock. What's a rock? It's nothing. No. In every rock, there's a soul and there's energy spiritual. Again, because of the concealment, so we don't see it. But the fact is, everything has the energy. And in continuation to that, he explains that the energy of everything that's created, from the things that you see the energy, you don't see the energy. What is the source of the energy? The source of the energy is the name that it's called. Now, the name is concealed. So when you see something moving, so you see the energy. You don't see the name, but the fact is, what gives it its energy? The name. The name is concealed part. However, later on in the Chassidic discourse, he explains that this that comes down to create and to keep alive everything that's created is the light. And he says specifically light, which is revealed in the item. So he brings over there from the author in Tanya, where he says in Egeres HaKodesh, in the 20th chapter, and he says as follows, that array of array from the Kav, when Hashem wanted to create the world, he created a tzimtzum, and then he put down the Kav, which is the line. So there's from the Kav is in every single thing that Hashem created, and everything that exists, and when this ray is on a revealed level. In other words, if this that the Kav, the line, creates something from nothing, even though the only one that can really create something from nothing is the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So he explains in Tanya, in Egeres HaKodesh, that the reason is, if it's only Hashem can do it, so how can you say it's coming from a ray from the Kav? Because the fact is, the Kav comes from the infinite light of Hashem. And we know that the light has the same power and capability of its source. So what do we see from here? That even a ray of the Kav, that in every single creation that exists, it has the same component of its source, the Ma'ir, the one that's the source of light, which means it has the idea of what? Of Gili revelation. So he continues on to explain that the light and the energy shines, and it's even in the lowest levels, and even in the most decrepit places. And like he brings the verse that it says, "In Esak Shamayim Shamat," if I look at a high place in which your God is revealed, Hashem is there. But if I go down to the lowest place, Hashem is concealed. You're there as well. And it was not only in heaven. Like we know, Hashemayim is Sapim Kvoidel, the heaven says, the honor of Hashem. But even the physical world, and even in the abyss, even there, the energy is revealed. And like he says, that every single person can know this. Every single person can know that Hashem is revealed all over. So in other words, so the question is like this. On one hand, he's saying is, we learned about the light, the energy, and the koyach. But there's a whole other idea of what the shay in the name, and the source of everything is the name. And without the name, you don't have it. But the light is revealed. Then the name is not revealed. So the question is, why does he, on one hand, doesn't he mention the whole idea of the name, when the name ultimately is the source of everything? So he explains as follows. That the energy of everything that exists, what is the source of everything? There's the light and the energy. What's the source? Comes from the name. Like the author explains clearly in Shari Yechamuna. So, and the reason is because there is a quality and there's a superiority of a name over the light. Now, so there's no question about the light exists everywhere and the energy exists everywhere. The source of it all is the name. But since the name is concealed, so therefore this quality that the name has gets revealed through the light. So again, powerful distinction. The light is revealed everywhere. The energy is revealed everywhere. The light is more makif, the energy is more pnimi. The light is more hovers over it, and the energy is more personalized. The name is a source of everything. The difference between the name and it's even higher, technically. The difference between the name in reality, the difference between the name and the light is that the name is concealed and the light is revealed. So based on this, he explains, that's why the Tzemach Tzedek, we explained before, he's going to go through all the different Chabad Rebbeim in a Chassidic discourse which begins by Yehi B'Shalach Paroi, when Paroi sent out the people. So he says, what does the verse say? By Yehi B'Shalach Paroi, when Paroi sent out Es Ha'am, the nation. So he says, why does it say the nation? It should have said, He b'shalach paroi es Yisrael. He said that to the Jewish people. Why does he use the expression of nation? We don't know what nation it is. Obviously it's the Jewish people. He should have been more specific. He said that to the Jewish people. Why does he say the term Am, nation. Now, Am also means from like a low, it's like a very, very, a flame that's going out. Very, very, very low fire, which means the fire is disguised. So he explains over the reason why he uses the term Am, because the Jewish people, when we were in exile in Egypt, so what does it say? It says in the prophets, "Zeratali ba'aretz," you're going to sow into the land. And we taught in Chazal that when a person goes ahead and plants something in the ground, so you take seeds, you put it in the ground. What happens to the seeds? They get obliterated. And then you have to pray with the water and the sun that something comes out of it. So why do you do that? You do it even though you're losing your seeds when you plant it, because there's going to be a tremendous benefit afterwards. So he explains this, as we know, in reference to Torah and mitzvahs, when it comes to Torah and mitzvahs, it's also called planting. In other words, through the fact that Hashem gave the mitzvahs to the Jewish people, and like it says clearly, Ki atem tiyu li eretz chayfetz, you're going to be to me a land of desire, and like the Baal Shem Tov teaches, that every single Jewish person has tremendous treasures, just like the treasures that are in the materialistic land, earth. So, but what? You have to reveal it. So as you look at the earth, you see earth. What happens when you plant something? All of a sudden things come out. Where were the things before it came out? They were concealed. Our job was to reveal it. The same thing also Moshe does. Every one of us have tremendous treasures. What we need to do is we need to reveal them. So what is it referring to? The way the Jewish people on this world, we have tremendous treasures. So how do we bring out the treasures that we have? It has to grow out. You have to reveal it. So the same thing also with reference to the Jewish people when we were in exile. Why were we in exile? We were in exile because of the tremendous blessing and the growth that's going to come afterwards. And what is the growth? That we're going to transform the sparks that are in Egypt. Now, so the question is, why is it that the growth and the expansion and the profits for the Jewish people is only when we elevate the sparks that are in Egypt, that are initially concealed? Why is that? Because that's because of the quality of the name compared to light. So he's giving us the secret behind it. In other words, the quality of name versus light. That's the reason why we went into Gullus. We went into Gullus because, again, if we're light, you have light. But what happens is, the name is much higher, but the name is concealed. Our job is to reveal the name. So that's the whole idea. When we went into Gullus is to elevate the sparks. And what does that mean? The goal is to find the name in everything. And then we go to a much greater place. And like he explains as follows. He says, like the Rebbe Marash explains, what it says that Hashem went 500 years. He traveled 500 years to acquire for himself what? A name. See, again, the buzzword, a name. Hashem traveled what? 500 years, he wanted a name. In other words, why is that? Because the source of a name is higher than the light. The goal is the name. We need that name. The light, everyone can connect to the light. The light's there. But the goal is to find the name, which basically is much higher, but it's concealed. Now, even though when you're dealing with revelation, specifically in the light, as we know that the oir, light, has the same component of the source of the light, and through the light you can see the quality of the source of the light. Like, for example, if you take a light of a candle, so you look at the light of a candle, you know it's coming from a candle. Or if you take the light of a torch, you know it's coming from the torch. Or the light of the moon, you know it's coming from the moon. And the light of the sun, you know it's coming from the sun. In other words, the difference between the light of a candle or a torch, what creates the different type of light? It's a source. However, with a name, you don't know what the person is, because the fact is you can have 20 people who all have the same name, and they're all different. Intellectually, emotionally, physically, they're all different. Why is that? Because the name doesn't really show you who the person is. Not only that, even the name of a species, which refers to the energy of the whole species, it's concealed. And we see clearly that Hashem praised Adam HaRishon, that he knew the names, means he knew the source. He knew the source of every creation. Because if the name was revealed on, let's say, the ox, he called it Asher. If you were able to see the source, that it's Asher, what would be the big quality that he figured out the name? So obviously, the name is concealed. And the same thing also, where what Adam Rishon said, for you it's befitting to be called, referring to Hashem, Adonai, which means that you are the master of all creation, everything that was created. In other words, why do you need Adam Rishon to do it? Because obviously it's not revealed. So you see that the shame is all about concealment. But nevertheless, so even on one hand, so the downside of a name is it's not revealed. And again, you could see 20 people with the same name. What does the name tell you? And you see that it took Adam Rishon to find it. It's concealed. But nevertheless, even though that's the downside of a name versus the light is revealed, energy is revealed. But nevertheless, there's a quality that name has over light. What's the difference? Because when you're dealing with light, even though, again, it's connected to its source, and it has components of its source, but nevertheless, a light is only a ray. It's only a ray. However, the name, even though it's disconnected and it's concealed, but the name of something is sourced in the essence. And therefore, by calling the name, you connect and you draw down the essence. For example, if somebody's fainting, that means he doesn't have his energy. And what does he have left? When someone's fainting, the energy is gone. The light is gone. What does he have left? He has his essence left. And when you call the person's name, you literally can revive the person. Why is that? Because when you call the person's name, you're calling out the essence. Not only that, just take it a step deeper. Even when you call someone's specific name, you actually draw in that specific energy into the person. And like it's brought down in Torah from the Alter Rebbe, that when you go ahead and call somebody Chacham, you're a wise person, you literally draw down wisdom into the person. Or if you call someone a chassid, a pious person, you draw down pious into the person. In other words, you draw down the power of intellect, the power of kindness from its source, which is a very, very powerful teaching of the Alter Rebbe. In other words, when you call somebody with a name, you give them a positive name, you're kind. So besides the fact you're giving them a compliment, but deeper, you're actually literally bringing in kindness into the person from its source. When you say someone you're smart, you're literally bringing in smart from its source. That's why we know that's the terrible thing when you call someone not a good name. Because what you're doing is you're actually bringing in that energy from a deeper place, and you can have more of it. So if you want to create good energy, call the person what you want him to be, and then he'll be that person. Which is a very, very powerful way to change an environment. Say good things, and good things are going to happen. And the same thing also on high. That when we call Hashem in the name of Chacham, he's wise or kind, what we're doing is we're awakening the light of Chachma, the light of Chesed, the light of wisdom, the light of kindness to come down. Even though before Hashem created the world, that the intellect and the kindness wasn't a concealed, it wasn't even in a concealed state, like he explains over there at length in Torah. And that's why it's explained in many places that when you call someone a name, it actually reaches higher than the 10 Sfirot HaGnuzot, the 10 hidden Sfirot. And how much more so when it comes to a name of a person, like for example, Ruvain, Shimon, which is higher than the name of Chachma and Chesed. And when you call the person the name, you're actually getting to the essence of the person. So the Rebbe is explaining something so powerful. That on one hand, yes, you have the name which is concealed, and the light is revealed, but nevertheless, the power of a name is that the name, even though it's concealed, it reaches the essence. And by using the name, you're actually drawing down the essence down here. So in other words, let's recap. The Machayas Kulam, the energy is all over. The energy is all over. The light is all over, the energy is all over. And the Rebbe says, guess what? The name is also all over. So why doesn't he use the reference of a name? Because the name is concealed. But nevertheless, the name is there. And when you actually call the name is found, you draw on the essence everywhere. So based on this, Rebbe explains, why is it that the godly energy of everything that Hashem created is in the level of what? Of a shame of a name. Like he explains in Tanya from Shai Yichdimun from the Alter Rebbe. In other words, even though, one second, how could it be? The chayas, the energy, what's the source from a name? But the name is concealed. Because there is a quality in a name which does not exist in light. Because light, even though, yes, it has the same component of its source, but again, it's only a ray. And how much more so energy of the light, of everything that Hashem created. In other words, besides the fact it's only from where? From the light of the Kab, which is already after the Tzimtzum. But even in there, it's only of a ray of the Kab. And that's the real power of a name, because a name reaches the essence of Kadosh Baruch Hu. And just like when it applies to the name of every single thing, whether it's the name of the whole species, or the name of the person, or the name that the person is called, so to speak in Hebrew, that the name is its energy. That's the source of its energy. And the same thing applies even to names, not necessarily in Hebrew, even in other languages. Why? Because since we know everything is divine providence, and we find in the different books of the previous Rebbe in many places as well, that he would focus on the energy of a person's name, even if it wasn't a Jewish name. And he would actually learn different ideas and ways to serve Hashem. Now, nevertheless, even though that the godly energy in a name is concealed, so because it's concealed, therefore you need the energy of the light which is revealed. And that's how you reveal the name. And then you have both qualities. You have the quality of the essence through the name, and then you have the quality that it comes revealed. So what I'm saying is, and ultimately in every single place, you need two components. You need to realize the light and the energy of God is all over, and that we see. But also what's there is the name, which is the source in its essence, but it's concealed. What brings it out? The light brings it out in a revealed way. And when we go ahead and realize that every single place and every single person has a light and energy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you have the name, which again is concealed, but you have the power to reach the essence, and by reaching the essence through the light, you actually reveal the essence, that will affect, it should be, the name of Hashem should be complete. Just like it's written, that's how you say it. And the cheer of Hashem will be complete. Together with the completion of the Jewish people, and the completion of the Torah, and the completion of Eretz Yisrael. And we know Eretz Yisrael is called Eretz. Why? Because that it wants to do the will of Hashem. In other words, what does it mean it wants to do the will of Hashem? It has the will, but also it's running to do the will of Hashem. It's not only wants to do, but actually is running. So wanting, just almost like in a concealed way. But running means it's in a revealed way. In other words, even though Eretz, we know, is Malchus. It's connected to the sphere of Malchus. And Malchus, we know, is general, everything is concealed there. So therefore, you have to have the spiritual work of what Kabbalah Soul to accept. But nevertheless, it's running to do the will of Hashem. And we're running, I've never used it says in Yiddish, we're running to do the will of Hashem. And where are we running? We're running to the redemption, the true redemption, the complete redemption, which is going to be with Mashiach Tzidkenu. And we're going to go with our youth, and with our elders, with our sons and our daughters. And like the Rebbe finishes off beautifully, and he says, B'mheira, b'yameinu, mamish, it's going to happen very, very quickly, and literally right now. So here you have another powerful Chassidic discourse of the Rebbe on Yud Shvat, and really with a very, very powerful message that Hashem basically is found everywhere in a revealed way. But more importantly, we learned today the superpower of a name that even though it's concealed, but through the name you can get to the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and through by calling good names, you create good energy. And like the Rebbe finishes off, and when you have the combination of the name which is concealed, but then the revealed part, and you connect to the essence, that creates completion in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in Am Yisrael, in Eretz Yisrael, in Torah Yisrael, and we will have, like the Rebbe said, we'll run to the ultimate redemption. And let's hope and pray that we run to the redemption. Our next class will be in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Have a great and blessed week. Shavua Tov.